Okay, and what we want to do in this video is come on to the very first thing that causes the supply curve to shift, and this is the subsidies and taxes. Now, it's not just any type of tax. These are things called indirect taxes. So we're talking about the supply curve shifting, and we're saying that we know that price will cause a change in the amount that firms make available for sale, but price is a literally price determinant, okay? Price causes a movement. Of the 6 factors that we've discussed in the previous video, what we're going to talk about are 2 things now, which are subsidies and taxes. Remembering that that subsidies and taxes just stands for the S, okay? So we've got to go through each of these in the stores, each of these letters. Now, an outward shift of the supply curve means simply just this, that at every price more is supplied, and this is known as an increase in supply, not quantity supplied. An inward shift of the supply curve means quite literally the opposite. It means at every price less is supplied, and this is known as a decrease in supply. Now, it's always a good idea to know what you're talking about before you speak about something, so we're going to have the 2 definitions. Now, what subsidies are financial support paid by governments to firms. Okay, now usually they can be for a number of reasons. If it's considered to be an industry in the interest of national interest or national security. So for something like the United States, the US government, the federal government would give subsidies to defense firms, okay? Because you wouldn't want to be importing a lot of your defense stuff, because then you would go to war, and then you might go to war with the country supplying you with that stuff. Also, just to try and increase employment, but usually with the view of lowering costs of the firms. Now, the type of taxes that we're talking about, as mentioned at the start of the video, are indirect taxes. Literally what they are is paid indirectly by the consumer to the government, and they're indirectly, i.e. the producer collects them on behalf of the government. They are taxes on spending, and they are added to the selling price of the good or service. Now, there will be far more on that in a later unit when we start to talk about the deadweight loss of indirect taxation, but we'll come to that at another stage. Now, we're talking about taxes on spending. So you want to sell something for €100, the government says is a 10% indirect tax on that. So therefore, you don't have to sell it for €100, but for €110. But when you do sell it, you have to give €10 to the government. That's what we're saying. Okay. So increases in government taxation on a product. Well, what would it do? It would reduce the profitability of that product, meaning that there'd be an inward shift in the supply curve. Okay, there'd be an inward shift as a result of an increase in indirect taxes. A reduction in taxation on a product would increase the profitability of that product, and as such cause the supply curve to shift outwards. Okay, nothing crazy there. So we've got reduction of indirect taxation, supply curve shifts outward at every price more is supplied, and this is known as an increase in supply. On the other hand, we've got an increase in indirect taxation, which is a value-added tax, an ad valorem tax. You'll hear me say all this kind of stuff. At every price less is supplied, and that's just known as a decrease in supply. Now, so we've done indirect taxes. Now we're going to talk about subsidies. If a subsidy is granted on the raw materials or on the labour employed by the firm, this is the effect of reducing cost, thereby resulting in an outward shift on the supply curve. If the subsidy is removed, this is the effect of increasing cost to the supplier. Essentially, it might as well be an increase in cost, and that would cause an inward shift. So an increase in a subsidy is simply an outward shift of the supply curve from S1 to S2, okay, at every price more is supplied, and this is known as an increase in supply. And then a reduction in a subsidy means that the supply curve would shift inwards, and that means that at every price less is supplied, and this is known as a decrease in supply. Guys, I really, really hope this helps. I hope that you're kind of, after watching demand and thinking about stuff, you're gaining a quicker insight into economics. This was the very first video explaining the list of videos that causes shift of the supply curve, and just try to remember stores. Remember the definitions for both subsidies and indirect taxes, and thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.